You are watching Xirtus.
80%, if not more, of my Twitter feed is just what's happening in LA.
Yeah,
And
it's
maybe it's because I
LA.
live in California, or maybe this is just happening globally. I don't even know, but it seems to be the focus. I've been like, as just out of curiosity, I lost my Facebook got deleted by Facebook for saying things that were fine to say a couple months after I said them, like
Quoting Whoopi Goldberg. You can say it.
during
You quoted Whoopi Goldberg. That's what
well,
that.
yeah, that was actually was the final straw. Yeah, I was quoting Whoopi Goldberg. They didn't like that during COVID
No,
hysteria. But
no, they did not.
but but anyway, I go and I check in, right? So I'm like, I'm curious, what are they saying on Facebook? I just like the comparison is so stark. Like I look at Twitter and it's like I'm seeing footage, like I'm seeing raw footage, a lot of it of what's happening in LA. I'm like, holy cow, that just happened. That just happened. And then I go over to Facebook, and what I'm seeing is mostly I'm not seeing any footage of LA. What I'm seeing is photography. And in every case, for the most part, it's like I can see the like how do we paint the protesters in the most positive light, like as
Mm.
like freedom fighters and whatever. I'm seeing that, and then I'm seeing a shocking amount of like arguments that all the people who are setting fires or being violent, they're MAGA, okay, and we need to get their identities because MAGA has now infiltrated the peaceful LA protest and is making
Right.
it violent because there's no other explanation. So it's got there's
Oh, they think
you
that
know
like MAGA people are pretending to do this
that's
stuff.
all like on my feed and the people who
Interesting.
like who my local community on Facebook. That's like what a lot of them are trying to because they have to have an angle on it because it's a very uncomfortable thing that's happening. Like this has to be a
What?
peaceful protest, right? And if it's not a peaceful protest, it can't be our fault or the group that we're identified with.
That's
So it's
wild, bro.
Much like the idea of January 6th being like, no, wait, that must have been Antifa who were doing that.
right. So this is
Well,
the thing though, is that there are certain facts like you could say negative things about January 6th, and in a lot of cases you'll be correct. And it is true that on January 6th that was an infiltrated crowd, and we know who a lot of those agents were, the
Right.
provocateurs who really pushed in a certain direction. Like, and this happened in 2022. Speaking of, the lockdown time, and all it takes is one person to throw a brick and it gives the police an excuse to attack. This is why I
yeah, but it
never
takes
like
a
I said,
corporation to have a pallet of bricks ready to go.
thank you, or whatever it is. So like this is
Or a
why
rock, right? Like that was the Santa Cruz Urban Outfitters thing where like they picked up rocks and I was like, where the hell did you get a rock in downtown Pacific Avenue? You had to bring your
right
own rock. Like
Yeah.
that's
BYOR. Yeah. So if I see a protesting crowd, I have to say, and this is very like the people can look down on me for this, but I go the other way, and I
yeah.
go the other way for one specific reason. Protests aren't what they used to be, and if I'm participating and holding the line in a protest that I believe in, all it takes is one provocateur to throw that soup can, and now we're getting tear gassed and rubber bullets and all the rest of it. And honestly, like I feel like I can get further. Like at least like I have an outlet here that's almost like a therapy. Like I can speak my mind. Some people will agree, some people will disagree, but at least I'm going to get further with this than I am holding a sign in the street with the possibility of not being understood by the authorities, and them, getting, I don't know, but
Well, it
it's
is interesting
crazy.
because
Like,
they keep bringing up this idea. Like, I mean, because everyone's like, well, hey, you guys had January 6th. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You get one, because if January 6th happened one time, and granted, it's kind of like most of the people with January 6th were like old ladies on Facebook who had like a QAnon like group
The
chat or
worst,
something
those are the
like that.
worst kind.
The worst offenders. But it's the ones who wore all black and no Trump hats that were breaking things down that seemed like to be the biggest trouble, or like the 6'6" guy, who was wearing the Trump hat that everyone was yelling at the time. Fed. Like we knew there was clearly like
You,
feds
you
that
know what it
were.
is? I almost see them as like the jokers in the deck. Like everyone sits down at the table if you're playing with the jokers, and you all just like universally agree, hey, whenever I play this hand, I get to use a joker, and that gets to like help me fulfill my goal. And then I'll let you do that too. Like we'll both allow each other to use the joker cards. That's sort of what like these agent provocateurs are. Like because if you say, hey, wait a minute, that's not like a full house, that's not a straight flush. And it's like, oh, like, am I not allowed to use my Joker card? Well, then you can't use your Joker card in the next game we play. So like
Right.
there's this universal like agreement that we're both sides are allowed to use agent provocateurs as long as it doesn't go past a certain line, I guess.
But it
Right.
does go past the line, and that's the thing that I remember, like, 'cause I was in Minnesota during the George Floyd protest, like 20 minutes away from at least 4 of them, because they weren't just like one or another. They were just continued. This was during COVID too, so it was like it's kind of like they go from you have to get vaccinated and wear a mask and stay inside to all right, just double bag it, get outside and start breaking windows, everybody. It's totally fine. It didn't really matter what was going on in one of their narratives, so long as it didn't. It's okay if it conflicts with another narrative. Just like pick a narrative of the du jour, like whatever we want to say. However, having one January 6th and then having a dozen of these other riots where these are violent riots where people are getting hurt. There's violence against not just property, which we can get into in a second, why the Waymo vehicles are being sabotaged. Because if you blow up a bunch of cars and they're all self-driving cars from the same company, that seems like a sponsorship deal, doesn't it? Like, isn't that kind of that doesn't really feel like as earnest as you want it to. And then to say, okay, well, this protest was, well, I mean, for the love of God, because if it's a protest where a bunch of people are getting hurt, physically hurt all the time, that's still really different than a couple dudes standing around inside of the White House or wherever the heck that they did. And I'm not saying that's a good thing either. Clearly, I think everyone agrees like January 6th was a bad deal from the get-go. Like most people I know were like, hey, don't go there. Like,
right.
I mean,
well, actually, speaking of that, like, so you guys, I didn't make it because I was at work and I got invited to interview the QAnon shaman guy, like the
God,
horns, right?
What a delight that red strike on our channel was, yeah.
Right. But the thing is that it is true that man on that day, like I had to stand reflected on some of this because I wasn't on Twitter on January 6th during that time, and I thought certain things about it because I was, I was being told what I was being told. I didn't know until later that Trump had tweeted. It was removed within like 2 minutes when he told everyone to go home. That guy who you interviewed stood there with a loudspeaker, basically telling the crowd, reading the tweet and the transcript of what Trump had said and saying, yeah, I know you don't like this, but he's telling you that it's done. Peaceful, we're to go home. Like, and that's what he said. And I'm not seeing anybody right now. I'm not seeing Newsom. I'm not seeing Karen Bass. I'm not seeing any of our representatives telling anybody to go home.
Right.
That's protesting. They're saying a lot of stuff, but they're not saying that one thing that Trump did actually say that I was forced to stand reflected on. I did not know that he said that at that time and that Twitter removed it within 2 minutes.
Yeah, I remember it because I was like cut up deep into Twitter at the time. So I think
who removed it? Was it Trump himself or was it?
It was in the Twitter files. I believe it shows that it was Twitter made the call to remove this.
Yeah, Twitter removed it.
Go home.
Twitter removed it. Yeah,
yes,
they removed
and so most people don't even know that he said that. Like,
yeah.
That's one of those.
And
things.
Twitter ended up taking down his account, which is like, okay, so now you're censoring the president of the United States during a violent riot where a bunch of people are, maybe they aren't in the army. I mean, unfortunately, maybe a lot of them were, but the ones who weren't, you would think, hey, there's a commander in chief of your group, actually both the army and the commander in chief of your, ideology and of your army. Both. He's telling you to step down. You take away you cut the head off of the chicken. You make it impossible. Cut the head off of the cockroach would probably be better, right? Because it keeps running around.
You tried to get the National Guard in there. Pelosi and company was like, that is true. Like, it's funny because these things are things that people have said, because what did you have to say?
Will said I would pay more attention to what Alex Jones' testimony on that day. And there, Alex was there too. I knew a lot of people that were there. I specifically wasn't. Just want to point that out. A lot of people assume I was, and I have video evidence because I live streamed myself at Princeton because I wanted to make sure that I was as far away as I could reasonably be. So I just kept the stream going as far away, and then YouTube still blackballed me and ruined my reach for subscribers. The shame on you.
From Canada, sitting there from Canada, we just look like a bunch of retards. I can say that word now because there was an executive order that says I can say retard now if it's to friends and jokingly.
It's funny for me because my enduring, it's amazing. All these years later, I still feel so upside down on what I feel is my common sense take on it is rare or something. Just like all these ideas, like getting back to the idea that, you know, Trump was saying stop. Like, of course Trump was saying stop. He didn't want that proceeding interrupted, you know, like this was, because to me, sorry, to address your question, to phrase it in the form of an answer to the question you asked, I was sitting here, I was like, this is going to be great. I was looking forward to, like, I'm going to sit and watch these hearings. This is going to be great. Finally, we've had all this argument ever since November, ever since Election Day. We've had all this argument about various election grievances, and the arguments are not allowed to happen here, and then the arguments are not allowed to happen there. You know, they get deplatformed off social media. They get dismissed out of the courts before evidence is heard. But finally, you know, now it's finally going to be the congressional hearing where whatever happens at the end of the day, and obviously there's like a 0 or 0.01% chance that the challenges will prevail, you know, like they're not actually going to vote to send the electors back and but at least they're going to get their day. You know, they haven't gotten their day on social media or their day in court yet, but the election fraud case is at least going to get its day in Congress. It's going to be the grand airing of grievances, right? They're going to get to stand up and say, like, here's the problem. Here's why it has to go back. Here's why I have to send the things back. And you can vote this motion down, but we at least read it all into the congressional record, right?
But it's not Murdoch's mystery. It's more like Kids in the Hall. That I'm just using Canadian terminology so you can understand me. But it's not like, hey, we're gonna get the information that we're looking for delivered to us. This is America, you know. So it's not gonna be some logical, piecemeal, sustained data that we were getting. Instead, it's gonna be this like a horrible show trial created by people that have a narrative it's like an American reality show, right?
Right. Well, on January 6th, somewhere in Florida, votes were still being counted. Let's just be clear about that.
So, you know, I was watching with interest to see, you know, because there was a wide variety of grievances, and some were very valid and some were a lot less valid, you know, like there was a whole lot of this, like, hey, I heard a rumor that signals were going overseas and blah, 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 blah. But then on the one hand, and then on the other hand, there's like, the Constitution makes it really clear who gets to make election rules, and then that wasn't followed. You know, so there were good arguments and bad arguments, and there had been a sort of a behind-the-scenes argument over those months about which arguments do we foreground. And I was happy to see on the morning of January 6th that it seemed like the more sensible constitutional arguments were being presented rather than the like, you know, kind of sci-fi Dominion stuff. Like less about the counting and more about the rules that were imposed at the last minute. And so anyway, I was just watching the proceedings. You know, people are offering arguments, and then some of the responses were coming back basically saying like, well, that can't be, or that doesn't matter because it's so improper for you to raise any challenge at all. And, you know, that's tedious or whatever, but I'm like just curious to see what's happening. And I was just watching C-SPAN, right? And then they were like, wait, something's happening. The procedure is being interrupted. Okay, they're filing out of the chamber. We might come back to this. And then it just was some like silent footage of just like a camera of that lobby where people were like filing in peacefully. Right. I did zero, like, I'm going to check around and see what else is happening. I was just like, okay, hopefully we're going to get this back going soon. I didn't know about the riots and chaos. I only saw the orderly thing. And I was just sitting there like, I was enjoying the debate. What is this? It seemed like everyone else was like, in retrospect, a lot of people have kind of talked about how January 6th was like the funniest day in American politics or something like that. Like whatever happened, whatever you think about it, that was a really fun time watching the news, right? But me, it was the opposite. I'm like, get back to the debate.
Right, yeah. Major distraction thing.
So I felt like I was on the Trump position because, of course, like that was like Trump, all his arguments got deplatformed off social media and dismissed out of the courts. And this was his one chance to like, no, I got C-SPAN. I get at least my couple of hours here to present my case, and then you can vote me out and whatever. But he
But
didn't
instead of
even
like,
get
let
that.
me ask you one question. Why do you hate America, Mr. Trump? And then just cut him off. That was
Yeah.
that was
There
the way
was
that
as far as media outlets are concerned, C-SPAN was one of the last mainstream media outlets to get basically compromised. So like for a long time, C-SPAN was very straightforward. They didn't have those kind of influences, and at a
Right.
certain point, it did too. So not completely, but it's just
Right.
that was like our last most straightforward news source, and oh well.